Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, this afternoon, doing something a little bit different because I like to do things a little bit differently. As you can see, you're probably wondering just what exactly is going on. Well, we're not looking at whiskey today, obviously, and we are looking at a spirit. So just kind of bear with me for a minute. What we're looking at is called aguardiente, which is Spanish spirit, very similar to Mar or grappa, which would be the French and the Italian versions of the same thing. Basically, what happens is that the producers that make this type of spirit will kind of like swill out the barrels and distill basically what they swill out. So it's essentially a grape-based spirit, generally double distilled, and a lot of it can be pretty industrial stuff. It has to be said, you know, pretty raw, uncompromising, and pretty heavy going. It has to be said. On the other hand, you can get some very nice Mars, some nice grappas, things like that. And I thought it'd be interesting to look at a couple of these and look at the wine that they're produced from and see if there is, you know, a correlation. I mean, you would expect that a spirit produced from a wine base would at least have some kind of the character of the wine. So that's what we're looking at this afternoon, and I hope you'll find this really interesting, because it's an unusual type of spirit that not a lot of people tend to come across or tend to try, but I think it's certainly worth looking at. So I guess without further ado, I will introduce this afternoon's little lineup and explain a bit more about them. Right, okay, so we are looking at a Spanish property called Pazo de Senorans. Pazo de Senorans are based in northwestern Spain in a province called Galicia, and they make wine from the Albarino grape. Now, the property itself was, or the winery is a 16th century Galician manor house. I believe the property has been in existence before 1989, but 1989 was kind of like the point where the not current winemakers, but the parents of the current winemakers, Marisol Bueno and Javier Marquez, I believe I pronounced that correctly, started making wine. And Pazo de Senorans is probably the best property in the region. They consistently make excellent wine year in, year out. In fact, I mean, I've tasted this, which is their standard bottling, the Albarino, ever since I think the first vintage I tasted was 1999, and consistently very good wine. And there's a couple of vintages. I think 2003 was exceptionally good. Certainly the last couple of vintages, 2010, 2011, were very good as well. And this afternoon we'll be looking at the brand new release, the 2012. This wine here is called the Selection Añada, which basically means selection of the year. And it's only made in what they consider to be exceptional vintages, when you get lots of ripeness, and you know the grapes are good enough quality to make this particular wine. The basic wine is fermented and in stainless steel. It stays about 5 months in stainless steel vats before being bottled. It then rests for about 4 months and is then released. On the other hand, the Selection Añada spends about 30 months in stainless steel tanks. It ages on its lees, which is the dead yeast cells and all that kind of stuff, which gives it sort of more character. It's then aged for about 12 months in bottle before it's released, and like I said, it's only made in exceptional vintages, and I believe this is only the third vintage they've made of this particular wine. The first vintage was 2000, second vintage was 2003, which is absolutely stunning wine. This is the 2005. I believe they have a 2006 as their next release, but obviously we'll be looking at the 2005. So those are the two wines, like I said, both made from 100% Albarino, and these are the two aguardientes they produce. The clear one is called Arujo de Galicia, and is bottled at 42%. As you can see, it's completely clear. It's double distilled. They have sort of small pot stills, direct fired, I believe, which is quite interesting, quite unusual. And the second bottling we have here is called Aguardiente de Ribas, which is bottled at a slightly lower ABV of 37.5%, and is flavoured. Post second distillation, they flavour it with chamomile, bitter orange skins, coriander, green verbena, and anise. So, could be quite interesting. So, like I said, the whole raison d'etre for this episode of the show is to see how much of the character of the grape ends up in the spirit. So, I think we'll start with looking at the first wine then. Right, okay, so we're looking at the 2012 Albarino. It's, what's it about? It's about sort of about £15–16 a bottle. So, like I said, very good quality. Let's have a look at the nose then, shall we? Aromatic, slightly grassy. Interesting. There's a real raw honey kind of character, which is unusual. I've not found that in this particular wine. I mean, Albarino has become sort of quite popular over the years. It's certainly a few years back when people were getting bored with Chardonnay. Albarino was touted as the next big grape because it had some of the characteristics, some of the fleshiness, apples and apricot that you find in Chardonnay, but not as sort of like as rich. And I must admit, I've not tasted a number of other producers, but I don't think they probably are some that are aged in sort of like new oak, but mainly it tends to be aged in tank to keep the freshness, and it has a lovely grassiness as well. Sometimes sort of a little bit like a Sauvignon Blanc, but anyway, this is really intense. A little bit of spice, but it's that kind of, like I said, it's that raw honey character, which is very, very unusual, which seems to be most prominent. Lovely nose. Palate. Lovely fresh finish. It's a really good food wine. Works really well with seafood in actual fact, because it's got quite a nice level of acidity, sort of mediumish kind of level of acidity, which gives it that, like I said, that freshness. Lots of apricot, fleshy fruit, quite mineral. Again, with that sort of natural raw honey kind of character, just adding a little bit of sweetness to balance it out. That is a lovely, lovely wine. Like I say, it's about sort of like 15–16 quid, something like that, or might even be a bit more. But it's certainly worth the money, and it's certainly, if you like things like Chardonnay, it's worth having a look at. It's a very, very, very good wine. So, very nice. Right, okay, let's take a look at the 2005 selection Añada. So, like I was saying, it is aged for a considerable longer period of time and aged on its lees, so that should aid complexity. And let's see. Deeper, richer, more intense. Again, it has a little bit of that kind of raw honey character. But there's definitely a sort of a light, leesy kind of character. A little bit of grass, some minerality. Yeah, that's gorgeous. I mean, this is not a cheap wine. This is somewhere in the 30 quid kind of mark. But oh, this is stunningly good. It's got a, that's again a lovely freshness to it. Sort of minerality, sort of bit of citrus. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Palate. Fantastic stuff. That broader, fuller. That leesy kind of character has it kind of almost sort of reminds me a little bit of a white burgundy, a little bit of that almost light oxidation kind of character, although it's not really oxidative. It's the lees that are giving it that kind of almost a bit of a sharpness. There's a citrusness to it. There's a bit of grassiness, lovely minerality. Again, very fresh, but fuller than the standard bottling. A little bit more honeyed, a little bit more sort of depth. But aftertaste is stunning. It really goes on and on and on. That is an absolutely sensational wine, and I love it. That's good. Right, okay, so let's have a look at the first of the two spirits. Like I was saying, so this is Aguardiente. Like I said, well, obviously they don't flush out the barrels because they don't use barrel aging, but they obviously clean out the stainless steel tanks and use the residual that's remaining to distill. So I imagine they also use a little bit of wine as well. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an awful lot if you just sort of swilled out a stainless steel tank. So anyway, let's see what this gives us then. Now it has that very classic Mar-like character, that sort of slightly high-toned, slightly earthy, almost sort of a little bit of Turkish delight kind of character. It's quite full. There's a definite honeyed character to the spirit. A little bit of sort of a light sort of apricot-y kind of character with a bit of grass. But it's young, obviously, and like I said, it has that Mari Turkish delight kind of character, but it's very soft. Some Mars and Grappas and what have you tend to have a very earthy, almost dirty kind of character, and I guess the cleanliness is because it isn't aged in oak. I would imagine that a lot of wines that are sort of oak aged kind of have this kind of more, I suppose you'd say, earthy, natural, dirty kind of character when they're finally distilled. But this is absolutely as clean as a whistle. It's really nice. Like I said, nicely balanced between that sort of Mar-like character and the sort of slightly sweet honey. Yeah. Very full. Again, predominantly that sort of Mari Turkish delight kind of character. A little bit of spice, a little bit of sort of toasted nuts, possibly. Again, very fleshy, full. It has a definite sort of light white fruit, apricot character. Still retains a little bit of that sort of the minerality that the wine has. which is quite interesting that that's kind of survived sort of 2 distillations. Does dry a little bit on the finish. It's not probably the most complex of spirits, but because it's had no barrel aging, so you're getting no wood character whatsoever. But it's light, it's soft, it's round. Like I said, it's very clean. I think that's really enjoyable. Not particularly expensive either, as it's bottled in 50 cl bottles. So yeah, I think it's an interesting spirit, and I quite like that. That was nice. Right, okay, on to the Haribas. Like I said, this is essentially the same spirit as the Uruhu, except that they seep chamomile, bitter orange skins, coriander, green verbena and anise in it after it's been through its 2nd distillation. So it's kind of like a digestive, I think, is the probably what the ancient apothecaries would have probably called it. So anyway, let's see what the nose gives us. Quite honeyed, quite rich, lots of chamomile. You get a little bit of earthiness to the spice. Certainly there's a little bit of anise, almost sort of licoricey kind of note, which is not a surprise from anise. There is a bit of a bitter orange. But the lower ABV is obviously allowing more of the sort of sweetness to come through, and again there's a little bit of that Turkish delight character, a lot of fleshy apricot, honey, and a sort of herbalness, which I'm guessing is probably coming from the green verbena, as I would imagine. But yeah, that's kind of nice. Palate. That's pretty sweet actually, very honeyed. Little bit of gentle spice. Again, a lot of chamomile, little bit of citrus, a little bit of orange, mainly on the aftertaste in actual fact. But again, it's that sort of honeyed apricot, white fruit, little bit of the anise coming through now on the very end, with that kind of licoricey kind of character. But full and honeyed and herbal. Yeah. Again, yeah, it's a digestive. It's kind of, it's quite nice. I mean, you could sort of, if you're inclined to drink sort of sweet wine with your dessert, it's certainly something you could sort of substitute for a sweet wine. And yeah, I think that's again really interesting. Probably not the sort of thing that I would really kind of opt to go for. It's got a little bit too much sweetness, although it has a bit of minerality and citrus to kind of offset that to a certain extent, but it does finish very sweet, so it's a sort of kind of style you have to like. So but yeah, really interesting. Right, okay, so let's sum this interesting little tasting up then, shall we? I love this wine. I mean, the thing is, I'm not just into my spirits. I'm into alcohol per se. You stick a form of alcohol in front of me, and I'll write a tasting note on it. It's whether it's wine, whiskey, aguardiente, beer, you name it. I'll write a tasting note on it. I mean, I was having a drink in the Brewdog bar yesterday, and I love Brewdog's beers, and so there I was on my mobile, sort of writing a tasting note. So probably people were thinking, what the hell is he doing, sort of sniffing his beer and all that kind of stuff. But you know, like I said, you stick some alcohol in front of me, and I'll write you a tasting note. So, and I love the wines. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Senorans. I think that they are probably, like I said, the best producer of Albarino. Their standard bottling, like I said, is just consistently good year in, year out. And the 2012 is stunning, absolutely stunning. And we will be getting some stock in of that once we've moved through the 2011. And like I said, if you're into sort of Chardonnay and things like that, you know, it's have a look at the Senorans. It's certainly something different, but you know, similar. The Selection Añada, yeah, that's good. That's lovely wine. Like I said, only ever made in what they consider to be exceptional vintages, and it is absolutely stunning. You know, without a shadow of a doubt, it's kind of like taking the standard bottling and sort of dialing it up to 10, you know, or 11 as the case may be. More concentrated, more depth, with that sort of leesy kind of character, giving it sort of a little bit more complexity. It's really good stuff. And the two aguardientes, well, yeah, really interesting. Like I said, you know, some grape based spirits can be pretty rough and ready, and I've tasted one or two of them that have been pretty rough, I can tell you that for a start. But it's obvious that they take the same care in the production of their spirits they certainly do in their wine, and it's got a wonderful cleanness to it, which, like I said, is probably down to the fact that it's aged in or matured, should we say, or produced, is probably a better word, in stainless steel, which keeps it clean and fresh, and it produces a really interesting spirit. Like I said, not the most complex of spirits on the planet, but interesting, different. If you like white spirits, if you like gin, you like vodka, it's worth trying. Because it's unusual. It's a bit different. It's a bit quirky. You know, so certainly worth trying. The flavoured aguardiente, which I just suddenly completely forgotten the name of, Ribas. That's it. It's interesting. I think again, it's just, if you like things like liqueurs, if you like whiskey liqueurs, if you like god awful, what do you call it, Jack Daniel's honey or whatever all these bourbon producers seem to be doing some sort of honeyed thing. If that's kind of your cup of tea, then yeah, I think you would quite enjoy this. You know, like I said, it's got a nice honeyed character, a natural honey rather than a sort of an artificial honeyed character. It's got sort of hints of herbs and citrus, orange, that kind of thing, and is really interesting. Possibly a little bit too sweet for my liking, but certainly I think if you like it a little bit sweet, then I think you ought to give it a go. So anyway, I think this is kind of a natural closing point for this episode of the show. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's something a little bit different. I don't think I'll be doing too many of these ones, and I imagine probably the next one will be, I don't know, back to whiskey, I would imagine, or I think I've got a gin one lined up, and I seem to have no end of them, different ones that I want to do. But before I do go, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone that's put a thumbs up or a like or what have you to the tasting episode I did, episode 59 I think it was now. It seems to have gone down well. You seem to like the way that I taste whiskey, and you know, I'd just like to say thanks for giving it a thumbs up and no thumbs down. Anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the show. Hope you keep watching, and I hope this gives you, you know, an interest in trying sort of some of the more, you know, weird and wonderful spirits that are out and about there. Certainly, you know, Aguardiente is certainly a weird and wonderful spirit, you know, give it a try. That's pretty much about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the show. Good dramming and good afternoon.